interesting, and I'm sure you all get it because of spirit, that I'm speaking here today, and yesterday I had a very powerful healing session which ties directly back to Mount Everest in 2012, which is the topic of my talk today, called Lost and Found on Mount Everest. So I'll just share the healing segment first, and then you'll kind of see why that ties back to my 2012 trek. So yesterday I went to a healer down in Tucson, and I specifically went to address some ear and throat issues that I've just been allowing to persist because I was not giving it the time and space to be heard. But I also have ankle issues. They twist out from underneath me a lot, and it happened quite a bit at Everest as well. And so she starts the healing session, and she asked the soles of my feet what it wanted to say. And so she starts off with, what are the, what does it want to say? And so the words that came up were unstable, shaky, can't get my footing. And then she said, where is your favorite place to be right now? And she was asking the soles of my feet. And the soles of my feet said, at the summit of a mountain. And she said, and why is that? And then I started weeping, of course, because the words that came up was that it's strong and it's stable, and I can count on it, and I can trust them. I can trust a mountain. So I want to feel the energy of that mountain, its strength seeping inside of me. So with that, I'm going to go into my talk now. So anyway, so you'll understand why. So in August of 2011, I moved from New York to Arizona with my husband and my 2 children. And within 5 weeks of that period of time, I moved out to start my separation and divorce. And so they say that the 3 most stressful experiences in someone's life is to move, to divorce, or a death. So I was experiencing 2 of those at the same time. And I moved here without any real family or friends. There was no network, so I was going to be taking this new journey without a network of, separating, divorcing, and becoming a single mother with no income, because we had closed our advertising company back in New York when we left. So to say that my entire life in almost every single direction was one big question mark, and there was uncertainty flooding into my body, is an understatement. To talk about what it really was kind of paralyzing fear. The uncertainty was massive. So one of the most important lessons that I learned when I was in the military was that during times of crisis and change, one of the most profound things that you can do is to keep an outward focus. That fear, when we turn inward and we focus on us and we focus on our fear, that's when bad things happen, and that's when we can't handle whatever stressors or things are unfolding in our life. So I knew that I needed a huge outward focus. I needed something to pull myself out of myself and focus on so that I could get through this transition period of time that was completely overwhelming me. And one of the most powerful tools that I have fallen in love with over the past few years is actually Facebook, because it connects people, right? Facebook is about life and it's about people, and I love life and I love people. So I posted a video of a summit to Mount Everest on a Friday night, maybe like 11 o'clock at night. And I just said with the post, this is one of the most inspiring videos I've ever seen, and it was of a summiter reaching the summit of Mount Everest. Within 3 minutes of me posting that video, a young woman who I met only 3 weeks earlier on a separate Facebook post chimes in with, I have a friend who's taking a charity trek to Mount Everest this spring. Would you like me to introduce you to him? Within seconds, he's on the post. And by 8 o'clock the next morning, I had a formal invitation to join the charity trek to base camp on Mount Everest. I followed my intuition, and I simply said yes. I read nothing. I knew nothing other than the date that we were leaving and that I would have to raise $5,000 for charity. I said yes to this trek knowing that I was 45 pounds overweight, that I had not been in any kind of exercise routine whatsoever, that I had not been hiking in probably a decade. that I would have no one to train with, that the entire team was in Canada. I was the only American, and I would only meet them the day we met at the Toronto airport to fly over. And knowing that 2 days before, I had been in the emergency room because I had had an injury and I thought I punctured my lung, and I could not even do sit-ups to start my exercise routine. And I only had 70 days to prepare, to train, and to raise my $5,000. I just said yes. I followed my gut, I listened to spirit, and I said yes. So I immediately threw myself into working out. I joined a body pump group 3 times a week. I started doing twice weekly treks up to Elephant Mountain, where I live in Cave Creek. And I was just trucking along and trying to raise my money and just move forward on this journey. And so I was doing everything that I could, doing my exercise routine, all that, and it's getting closer and closer. And now it's 4 days before we are set to fly out to Nepal. And I had to call my team leader, Sean Dawson, in Canada, and tell him that I was flat on my back, laid out with a horrible ear infection that had me completely wiped. He said, "Christine, an ear infection at altitude can be fatal. You need to get this under control immediately." So I'm pretty natural alternative. I never go to Western medicine, doctors, but I knew I was not comfortable telling Sean I'm going to take my colloidal silver. I didn't want any kind of conflict between us when we're on a mountain and doing something that challenging. So I decided to go to a Western doctor and get my, antibiotics, which I never take. And I'm sitting in the parking lot waiting for my prescription to be filled, and I'm sitting in the car seat, in the front seat, and I just start bawling. I start bawling, and I realize that this trek was more than just me getting an outward focus. And this ear infection, this potential obstacle that was trying to take me out from taking on this challenge, just brought up all the things of my past, right? So am I going to fail at trying to climb this mountain? And so the waves of emotion of everything in my past that I had ever failed to achieve, dreams that I had dreamed of that had died a very painful, soulful death, started running through, just waves of it coming through me as I'm just bawling my eyes out in this parking lot. And so at this point, leaving at 4 days, and I had only raised about probably $2,400 towards the $5,000 for the charity trek. And I just decided to share my journey on Facebook. And so I wrote this very raw, vulnerable post talking about this journey and now this ear infection, and I hadn't raised enough money, and I'm crying because of all my broken dreams, and I know you understand that, and I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm just trying to let you know that I know what it feels like to have your dreams die, and how painful that can be, and how much uncertainty that can give you, and how sometimes those experiences can actually kill your ability to dream because it's too painful to go back there, to try to dream again when you have been so wounded by that failure, because it's really right, it's just a learning moment. So what was so beautiful about that post was that I had a flood of responses on that thread of people saying the most beautiful things to me, who had followed me on my training journey as I logged everything on Facebook as I was training during those 64 days at that point. And also, people went on my website in droves and started donating, and I raised $5,800 because of that, because I allowed myself to be vulnerable and share my journey and tell them exactly where I was. And so I get my prescription. The next 4 days I get through, I start packing them, and we fly out. So I fly out to Nepal, 5 plane rides later, meet my team in Toronto, we land there. I don't remember if it was maybe 36 hours, however many hours later that we finally got there. It was a pretty exhausting trip, and I literally flew to Toronto at probably 60% of my health capacity with that ear infection, but I was going no matter what. So what's so beautiful about the universe is that it gives us so many opportunities to grow. And so we land in Nepal, and I'm getting excited about meeting the team, and we all decide to go out for a team lunch/dinner to a safe restaurant, which we know that's been cleared so that, you know, it's good food, you don't have to worry about getting sick. And I get food poisoning from our very first meal. So I go back to the hotel, losing it in every direction, as you can imagine, that's all I'll say. Not good, feverish, weak, my antibiotics, my ear infection, and I'm thinking, okay, just another little obstacle to get up this little mountain. So we start our trek. We were there for a few days buying gear and getting up our final reservations, everything put together. And so the morning we fly to Lukla, the #1 most dangerous airport in the world. It's the shortest runway uphill that basically goes straight into a mountain, and when you take off, it goes right off a cliff. So we fly out that morning, and I'm basically weak, feverish, haven't eaten in 2 days, and this is how I'm starting my trek on antibiotics for my ear infection. So we, before we start the trek, Sean gives us just a briefing about some of the things to expect and about altitude sickness. So apparently altitude sickness is pretty normal, something that you should expect. And if you're going to get normal altitude sickness, you'll have headaches all across the front part of your head. If it is not just altitude sickness, if it has accelerated to cerebral edema, you will get headaches and migraines all across the back of your head. So we start trekking, we start going up the mountain, and the universe had another opportunity for me to grow. I start getting horrific altitude sickness, except it's not across the front of my head, it's all across the back. So I'm not sleeping any night. We took 7 days up to climb up the mountain between the acclimatization days, and every single night I would lay in bed crying from the pain of the migraine across the back of my head. But I was always pretty good. I kind of kept it really quiet. I really didn't want to wake my roommate, and so I would kind of just silently cry and deal with the pain and try to do my energy work and try to understand what was going on. But I basically just rolled around every night, just waiting for that knock at the door to say, okay, it's time to trek again. And the knock was actually a blessing, so I could just get out of bed and just deal with it and start moving on. So it's now the night before summit day, and we're at the highest altitude, and it's so bad now that I've woken my roommate in the middle of the night, and she says, Christine, I think I need to go get Sean. And I screamed at her from my sleeping bag, and I said, you are not getting Sean. I am going up this mountain no matter what. So a few more hours roll by to get that knock at the door, that blessing, so I can just keep moving. And one of our teammates is throwing up on the side of the trail as we start. It's really, you're thinking, what on earth are we doing? It's like, what is the price to be paid for this experience? And so I'm going, and we did a solid 4 hours, and then we broke for lunch. And we come out from lunch, and we come out from the tea house, and we go around this one section, and I made the mistake of looking up, which you really don't want to do in mountain climbing because it's always higher than you think. So I look up at this section, which I did not know at the time but found out later was 700 feet high at a 35-degree angle. And I look up, and every single cell in my body screams, there is no freaking way, and there was a different word, I am getting up that mountain. I can't do it. I don't have it. So I remember taking a deep breath, and I said, how am I going to do this? And I forced my head down to look at my feet, and I took a few deep breaths, and I said, you are never to look up again. You are going to look at your feet, and you are going to take one step at a time. That's it. You're not going to think about anything other than looking down at that very next foot placement. Not a single thing. Your head's not going any further than this very next step. So I stepped, and I stepped, and I stepped, and I got to the top of that section. And I have to tell you, when I looked back down, when we had finally gotten to that last part and I was moving on to another section, I looked down and I thought, that was a miracle. I cannot believe I made it up that section. And so we kept moving, and we got to base camp. And at the time, I had thought that I might actually want to summit Mount Everest. And then what I found within myself at that moment was when I reached base camp, because some of the trekkers were going to actually go in and start interviewing some of the campers, the hikers that were going to go summit that season. When I got to base camp and I got to the rock and I got that picture, I just asked my body, my soul, what are we doing? Or am I going to go and talk to those trekkers? And my body came back with, hell no, you're done, you're complete, go home. So I literally turn around and I see that one of our Sherpas has already started back with 2 of our other hikers. And so this other group is still mulling around taking all their pictures. And I was complete with this mountain. And so I don't know if you've ever been at altitude, but it's very difficult to breathe. Every step you're heaving, your breath is heaving. It's 2/3 the amount of oxygen that you have. And so I see this Sherpa with the 2 teammates, and I start sprinting. I don't know if you've ever sprinted at altitude. It's not exactly fun, but I was complete. I was done, and I was getting the heck out of there. So I sprint and I catch up with them, and we just start tearing back to the mountain. And so we get back to the tea house, and I'm very happy. And the really funny thing is that you find that there are certain food products that are very, very popular, and for whatever it is among mountaineers, Pringles is like it. Like they're in every tea house all the way up the mountain. So I've been pretty good about, I was trying to, get healthy, release some weight. So I really didn't eat that stuff on the way back. But there was no beer at altitude. I was not having a shot of tequila. There was nothing. So I basically celebrated with a can of Pringles and like a Snickers bar or whatever it was. That was my celebration dinner for my celebration victory. And so we came up in 7 days, and we were heading down the mountain in 3. And so we were definitely hauling butt, going fast and heading down. And so our last day, my ankles and my feet were really, really tired, and I fell 3 different times, twisted my right foot twice and my left foot once, cut my knee, fell pretty bad. And then the last 2 hours, it was pouring rain. And so when I finally completed the trek, I mean, everything was done. Like, I'm down at the mountain, and I'm down at the Paradise Hotel in Lukla. It's kind of epic, right? The Paradise Hotel. It is paradise when you're finished, because you are so thankful it's over. So I walk in, and the funny thing is that during the whole trek, I had been pretty conservative when it came to eating. I actually took clothing out of my bag and brought up my own food source. I had protein shakes that I would have for breakfast and lunch every day, while the rest of the team was eating whatever the tea house had, and I only ate dinner with them, and it was always very something like simple rice, because I'd been in India for 5 weeks and got colitis, so I was a little paranoid. So I walk into the Paradise Hotel. I'm now complete. I don't have to worry about whether I'm going to get sick or whatever. And I sit down, and the waitress comes over, and several of my teammates are over there. I said, I'll have a beer, and I want spaghetti bolognese. And one of my teammates says, aren't you afraid of what kind of meat that is? And I just looked over and I said, I could care less. This is my victory dinner. And let me tell you that beer was the best beer that I have ever had, because with every single sip, the only thing I could taste was victory. So let me just share that experience was one of the most powerful experiences of my life. And the reason it was because I was reborn on that mountain. I came back from there with the ability to dream again and to start a new chapter of my life with new dreams at a more authentic level, a stronger human being, a kinder human being, a wiser human being, and it's amazing. I'm currently training to summit Mount Rainier this summer, and I have fallen in love with mountains. I love the strength I feel when I'm on them. I feel like every time I climb a mountain, it's like I have a one-on-one session with my own personal guru who's, helping me to get present, to be still, to find my strength, and to just keep moving and to reach higher levels within myself that I did not think was possible. So the things that I'd like to share with you about moving, like some of the lessons, is that 1, if you are climbing a mountain in Mother Nature or in your real life, and you look up and you feel overwhelmed by how big it seems, take a deep breath and look at your feet and just focus on your very next step. That's all you need to do. The second thing I'd like you to remember that no matter where you are, better is possible. It is always possible. You are one breath away from better. You just have to remember that and have faith and trust. The next thing I'd like to remind you is that when you think you have nothing left, you're wrong. When I came out from lunch after 4 hours of hiking and I looked at that 700-foot section at a 35-degree angle, I was certain of one thing: I couldn't do it, and I did it. So when you are certain you can't do something, you're wrong. Thank you very much.